Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. I'm on my knees in front of a creature that shouldn't exist, my fingers wrapped around a small gold crucifix. It's my grandmother's, worn smooth from decades of her prayers, passed to me the day she died. The creature stands 3 feet away, and I can see blood dripping from its chin. Fresh blood. Anna's blood. James's blood. Father Bernie's blood. Their bodies are scattered across the stone floor around me. I can smell the copper thickness in the air, taste it on my tongue. The creature's black eyes are fixed on the crucifix in my trembling hand, and for the first time since this nightmare began, it has stopped moving toward me. "You pray to him," it says, voice like stones grinding in a dry well. But I need to go back. I need to tell you how Dr. Rhys Grant, a man who built his entire career on empirical evidence and rational thinking, ended up on his knees in a tomb 2,000 years old, begging for his life. My name is Dr. Rhys Grant. I'm 34 years old, and I'm an archaeologist specializing in first-century religious artifacts. For the past 6 years, I've worked for Prometheus Historical Research, a private firm contracted by governments, universities, and occasionally the Vatican itself to investigate historical mysteries with theological implications. Most of our work is disappointingly mundane. We authenticate supposed pieces of the true cross, usually medieval forgeries made by enterprising monks. We examine miracle relics that turn out to be chicken bones with fake patina. We translate apocryphal texts discovered in forgotten libraries that inevitably lead nowhere. The pay is exceptional, the travel interesting, but the actual work rarely lives up to the promise of adventure that drew me to archaeology in the first place. I'd been content with that reality. Content with a job that paid my bills, funded my research, and allowed me to maintain a comfortable distance from anything that might challenge my carefully constructed worldview of facts and evidence. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. I was in my Boston apartment on a Tuesday night in early July, cataloging pottery fragments from a dig in Jordan, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Hugh Pierce, our director. Pierce is 62, Oxford-educated, and not given to dramatics or late-night phone calls unless something genuinely significant has surfaced. "Rhys, I'm sending a courier to your address," he said without preamble. "You'll receive a package within the hour. Do not open it around anyone else. Do not discuss its contents with colleagues, friends, or family. Understood?" "Understood," I replied, curiosity already burning. Exactly 53 minutes later, a courier arrived with a sealed leather portfolio. Inside were photocopies of manuscript pages. The originals, according to Pierce's accompanying note, had been discovered in a private library attached to a monastery in northern Syria. How Prometheus had acquired access to them was above my clearance level and, frankly, I didn't want to know. The manuscripts were remarkable. Written in a mixture of Aramaic and medieval Latin, with some passages in Byzantine Greek, they showed clear evidence of being copied and recopied across many centuries by different hands. Dr. Anna McKee, our head linguist, had spent 2 intensive weeks translating them before Pierce decided to show them to the rest of the team. What she'd uncovered wasn't in any biblical canon I'd ever studied. According to these texts, Judas Iscariot did hang himself after betraying Christ for 30 pieces of silver. That much aligned with Scripture. But the story didn't end there. The manuscripts claimed that before Judas could die, before the rope could finish its work, he was cursed. Not by God directly, but by something older, something that predated even the Hebrew Scriptures. The curse transformed his attempted suicide into something far worse than death. Judas became something else, something that couldn't die. Something that fed on blood and lived in perpetual darkness, condemned to wait for a final judgment that would only come at the end of time itself. The manuscripts used a word in Aramaic that Anna translated as the blood drinker or the night walker. In modern terms, a vampire. The first vampire. But what made Pierce contact our client immediately, a Catholic archdiocese in Philadelphia that specialized in investigating unusual theological claims, were the geographical references included in the texts. They were specific enough to trace. The valley where no birds sing. A mountain range where the sun fears to linger. References to a tomb, sealed with the sign of the cross and the older marks of binding. When Anna cross-referenced these descriptions with modern topographical surveys and historical records, the coordinates pointed to a remote, disputed region in the Lebanese mountains, very close to the Syrian border. Pierce assembled our team within 48 hours. Dr. Anna McKee was our linguistic expert. 32 years old, fluent in 7 ancient languages, with published research on Dead Sea Scroll fragments that had earned her international recognition. She had a photographic memory for obscure texts and a nervous habit of twisting her wedding ring whenever she was deep in concentration. During our first briefing about the manuscripts, she'd twisted that ring constantly, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement only a true academic feels when confronting the impossible. Father Antoni Burney served as our theological consultant and liaison with the church. 56 years old, he'd spent 3 decades investigating miracle claims for the Vatican. Everything from weeping statues to stigmata cases. He'd exposed enough frauds to be deeply skeptical of sensational stories, but he'd also witnessed enough genuine mysteries to maintain an open mind about the supernatural. His leather-bound Bible went everywhere with him, its pages worn soft from constant reading and reference. Our security detail was led by James Martin, a former Marine raider with 20 years of experience operating in some of the world's most hostile territories. He'd worked protection details in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, places where keeping civilians alive required more than just tactical training. He brought 5 men with him: Max, Adam, Lennon, Spears, and Thaler. All of them were professionals who understood that sometimes the biggest threats weren't the ones you could see coming. They didn't ask questions about why archaeologists needed armed escorts to examine an old tomb. They just checked their weapons, reviewed the topographical maps, and prepared for the worst. We flew into Beirut on a commercial flight, then transferred to a private helicopter that took us deep into the mountains. The Lebanese government had been cooperative once certain financial arrangements were completed through intermediaries. They provided the necessary permits and agreed to minimal oversight. The region we were entering was technically disputed territory, too remote and dangerous for anyone to care about controlling it, too close to active conflict zones for casual exploration. The valley appeared exactly as the manuscripts had described it. Jagged formations of gray rock jutted from barren, lifeless soil. There was no vegetation except for a few skeletal shrubs that looked like they'd been dead for years, maybe decades. No animals, no birds, no insects. Nothing alive at all. "This place feels wrong," James said as we unloaded our equipment from the helicopter. The pilot was clearly eager to leave. He kept glancing nervously at the surrounding cliffs, his hand never far from the collective. "Listen, no wind, no sound. Nothing." He was right. The silence was oppressive, unnatural. Even our voices seemed muffled and absorbed by the landscape before they could properly echo off the rock walls. It was as if the valley itself was swallowing sound. The entrance to the tomb system was exactly where Anna's research had predicted. A narrow fissure in a cliff face, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. Someone, centuries ago, had carved symbols into the rock surrounding the entrance. Christian crosses overlapped with much older marks. Symbols that made something deep in my gut tighten with instinctive unease when I looked at them directly. Anna photographed everything methodically before we entered. Her camera flashed stark in the growing shadows. "These older symbols," she murmured, running her finger along one without actually touching the stone. "They're not in any language I can identify. Pre-Aramaic, possibly. But their purpose seems clear. They're meant as warnings. Or perhaps as binding marks, to keep something contained." James went in first, his rifle equipped with a mounted tactical light. Max and Adam followed close behind, their movements professional and cautious. Then came our research team, myself, Anna, and Father Burney. The remaining security personnel, Lennon, Spears, and Thaler, brought up the rear, eyes constantly scanning for threats. The temperature dropped at least 20 degrees within the first 50 feet. Our flashlights and weapon-mounted lights cut through absolute darkness, revealing walls that glistened with moisture and something else. A mineral deposit that looked almost organic in the way it had formed across the stone surfaces. We'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes when we found the first body. It was positioned in a small alcove carved into the tunnel wall, as though someone had deliberately placed it there as a warning or a trophy. The skeleton still wore rotted robes that might have been white once. though now they were stained brown with age and decay. What made my breath catch wasn't the age of the remains. It was the condition of the bones. The cervical vertebrae were shattered, punctured with two distinct holes that had been driven through the bone with tremendous force. The kind of force that shouldn't be possible from any natural predator. "First century," Anna said quietly, crouching beside the remains with her flashlight. She pointed to specific details in the weaving pattern of the fabric, the construction of the sandals that had partially survived, the textile work, the thread composition. This person died roughly 2,000 years ago, probably within decades of Christ's crucifixion. We continued deeper into the mountain, and the bodies multiplied. Some wore the segmented armor of Roman legionaries, their swords still in scabbards, their shields corroded but identifiable. Others had the chainmail and distinctive tabards of Crusader knights, Europeans who'd come to the Holy Land during the medieval period. One cluster wore Wehrmacht uniforms, Nazi soldiers from World War II, their insignia still partially visible on the rotted fabric. The most recent corpses we discovered wore Soviet winter gear from the 1980s, the synthetic materials still partially intact. Every single skeleton, regardless of era, displayed the same catastrophic neck wounds. Bones shattered and punctured with two distinct marks, as though something with immense strength had bitten clean through the vertebrae. "Something has been here for a very long time," Father Bernie said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. He'd stopped reading from his Bible. Now he just pressed it against his chest with both hands, knuckles white with tension. Centuries, multiple millennia perhaps, killing anyone who finds this place. The tunnel system branched and twisted, leading deeper into the mountain's heart. James marked our path carefully with chemical light sticks, leaving a glowing trail that would guide us back to the surface. The air grew progressively thicker and harder to breathe, tasting of copper and old earth and something else. Something that reminded me of funeral homes and morgue refrigerators. We'd been underground for nearly 2 hours when we heard them. Wings. The sound of thousands upon thousands of wings. The bats came in a shrieking, chittering wave, pouring from side passages and ceiling cracks we hadn't even noticed in the darkness. They filled the tunnel completely, a living mass of leather and claws and teeth that blocked out our lights entirely and turned the world into chaos and pain. Someone was screaming, Max, his voice raw with terror and pain as the creatures swarmed him. James was shouting orders, trying to maintain unit cohesion, but his voice was barely audible over the deafening sound of beating wings. "Move forward! Get to the chamber ahead!" James's rifle discharged, the muzzle flash briefly illuminating the nightmare around us, a solid wall of bats, more than I'd ever seen in one place, moving with disturbing coordination. We ran, stumbling over each other in the darkness, hands over our faces as the creatures tore at any exposed skin with tiny claws and teeth. The tunnel opened suddenly into a much larger space, and we tumbled through like refugees fleeing a flood. Behind us, the bats formed a living, breathing curtain across the tunnel entrance. They didn't follow us into the chamber, they just hovered there, thousands of tiny red eyes reflecting our flashlight beams, their wings beating in an almost synchronized rhythm that sounded disturbingly like breathing. Then, slowly, deliberately, they retreated back into the darkness of the tunnels. We did a quick head count. Max was missing. We could still hear him somewhere back in the tunnel system, his screams echoing through the passages, desperate, terrified, growing progressively weaker. Then, abruptly, the screaming stopped, leaving only the oppressive silence of the tomb. James tried his radio. Nothing but static. His satellite phone, which should have worked anywhere on Earth, showed zero signal. We were completely cut off from the surface, from our extraction team, from any possibility of calling for help. "We need to extract now," Adam said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We go back through those tunnels, we get to the surface, we call for backup." But the tunnel behind us was still filled with the distant sound of wings, quieter now, but definitely still there. The bats hadn't left. They were waiting. There was no going back, not yet. So we had only one option: go forward. The chamber we'd stumbled into was enormous, a natural cavern that someone, perhaps centuries ago, had modified and expanded. As we set up our portable lights on tripods, the walls revealed themselves gradually, and what we saw made my skin crawl. They were covered, floor to ceiling, with carvings. Biblical scenes, the crucifixion, the Last Supper, various miracles, mixed with images I couldn't immediately identify. Angels and demons locked in eternal combat. Heaven and hell separated by what looked like a thin, fragile membrane. And repeated everywhere, carved over and over in what seemed like obsessive compulsion, the same figure. A man with a noose around his neck, his eyes wide open, his mouth frozen in what might have been a scream, or might have been a prayer, or might have been both. In the center of the chamber stood a tree, a dead oak tree, its bark blackened and petrified by unimaginable age, its branches reaching toward the ceiling 50 feet above like skeletal fingers, trying to claw their way toward light that would never reach this deep. And behind that tree, barely visible in the shadows cast by our inadequate lights, was a tomb. It was remarkably simple, just a rectangular block of limestone with a flat capstone resting on top. No decorations, no elaborate carvings, no gold or precious materials. It looked exactly like the kind of tomb a poor man might have been buried in 2,000 years ago in this region. Humble, unremarkable. Except for one thing. It was positioned in the exact center of this massive chamber, with the dead tree standing guard before it like a silent sentinel. "That has to be it," Anna breathed, her voice barely audible even in the tomb's silence. We approached slowly, carefully, our footsteps echoing off the walls and ceiling. Above us, I could now see more bats, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, clinging to the ceiling and walls, motionless, watching our every move with those unnerving red eyes that seemed to glow with their own internal light. Their absolute stillness was somehow more disturbing than their earlier violence had been. James positioned his remaining men, Adam, Lennon, Spears, and Thaler, in a defensive perimeter around us, weapons ready. They swept the chamber methodically with their rifle-mounted lights, but found nothing alive except the watching bats and us. I reached the tomb first, my heart hammering against my ribs hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. Up close, I could see that the capstone had been moved before. Multiple times, judging by the deep scratches in the stone where it had been pushed aside and then replaced. The scratches looked old, worn smooth by centuries of accumulated dust and mineral deposits. Anna knelt beside the tomb, her flashlight held close to the stone surface. There were symbols carved into the sides of the tomb itself, barely visible under layers of accumulated grime and time. She pulled out a small brush from her field kit and began carefully cleaning away the dirt. "It's Aramaic," she said after a long moment, her voice strained with concentration and something else. Fear, maybe, or awe. "Very old Aramaic, 1st century dialect." She paused, her brush moving to another section. "And here, Latin, medieval Latin, added much later." Another pause, her movements becoming more agitated. "And Greek, Byzantine Greek, and Arabic, classical Arabic from the medieval period." She looked up at me, and I could see that her face had gone pale in the flashlight beam. "Reese, these inscriptions span nearly 2,000 years. Different languages, different time periods, different hands carving the letters, but they all say essentially the same thing." "What do they say?" Father Burney asked, moving closer, his Bible still clutched against his chest. Anna's voice trembled as she translated, "He who seeks the betrayer shall become as he is. He who was cursed to witness eternity shall drink the blood of those who seek him." The chamber fell into a silence so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat, could hear the shallow breathing of everyone around me, could hear the faint drip of water from somewhere in the distant darkness. I looked at the tomb, at the ancient stone that had sat here undisturbed for 2 millennia, at the scratches showing it had been opened and closed many times across the centuries, at the warnings carved in multiple languages by people separated by hundreds of years, but united in their need to warn future generations. "We need to open it," I heard myself say. James and I positioned ourselves on opposite sides of the capstone. The limestone was massive, easily several hundred pounds, but when we braced our weight against it and pushed, it moved with surprising ease. It was balanced on some kind of ancient pivot mechanism, engineered with a precision that seemed impossible for the era. With a grinding sound that echoed through the chamber like thunder, the capstone swung aside. The smell hit us first. Not decay. The tomb was far too old for that. This was something else. Old earth, mineral deposits. And underneath it all, something I couldn't quite identify. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I shone my flashlight into the opening. The tomb was empty except for a thick layer of dust and some fragments of rotted fabric. No body, no bones. Nothing that suggested anyone had ever been buried here. "It's empty," I said, unable to keep the disappointment from my voice. "There's nothing." "Wait." Anna moved closer, her own light joining mine. "Look at the inside of the capstone. There's something carved there." She was right. On the underside of the stone we'd just moved, barely visible under centuries of grime, were more symbols. Anna pulled out her brush again and began carefully cleaning. It's a name," she said slowly, her brush revealing letters one at a time. "Judas Iscariot. And below it?" She paused, her hand trembling slightly. "It says, 'He who was called friend and became enemy. He who was blessed and became cursed. He who sought death and found eternity.'" A sound echoed from somewhere deeper in the chamber. Not the bats, something else. A scraping, like stone against stone, or claws against rock. "Did anyone else hear that?" Lennon asked, his rifle coming up to his shoulder. We all froze, listening. The sound came again, closer now. Definitely movement. Something large moving through the darkness beyond our lights. James made a hand signal and his men instantly tightened their perimeter, weapons trained on the shadows. "Stay close to the tomb," he said quietly. "Defensive positions." The equipment started failing then. First, one of our portable lights flickered and died. Then another. Anna's flashlight began to strobe, the beam cutting in and out like a dying heartbeat. My own flashlight dimmed, the batteries draining impossibly fast, despite being fresh. "This isn't right," Spears muttered. "These batteries were brand new. They should last for hours." The temperature dropped further. I could see my breath now, misting in the beam of my dying flashlight. The cold wasn't gradual. It was sudden, sharp, like we'd walked into a freezer. Father Bernie began to pray, his voice low and steady. "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." The bats suddenly went silent. All of them. Thousands of them clinging to the ceiling and walls, and they simply stopped moving, stopped breathing. The silence was so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums. Then they vanished. Not flew away, vanished. One moment the ceiling was covered with them, the next they were simply gone, as if they'd never existed at all. The only sound was the echo of Father Bernie's prayer bouncing off the empty stone. Something moved in the shadows behind the dead tree. It was subtle at first. Just a shifting of darkness, a suggestion of form where there should have been nothing. Then it stepped into the weak, failing glow of our remaining lights, and every rational thought I'd ever had about the world simply stopped. It might have been human once. The basic structure was there. 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, a head. But everything else was wrong in ways that made my brain rebel against what my eyes were seeing. The skin was like ancient parchment, yellowed and thin enough that I could see the suggestion of bones beneath. It stretched too tight over the skeletal frame, creating hollows and angles that shouldn't exist on a human face. The eyes were completely black, not dark brown or shadowed, but black from edge to edge, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They held something in their depths that made me think of vast stretches of time, of centuries piled upon centuries of existence. Its hands hung at its sides, fingers too long and tipped with yellowed talons that curved like a raptor's claws. The nails looked thick and hard as horn, stained dark with something I didn't want to identify. It wore rags that might have been robes 2,000 years ago, hanging from its frame in tatters that barely covered the emaciated body beneath. And folded against its back, almost invisible in the shadows, were wings. Not angelic wings. These were leathery and veined, like a bat's wings magnified to impossible size, capable of wrapping around its entire body like a living shroud. The creature's face, God, its face. It held every year of its existence in those hollow features. 2,000 years of suffering and isolation and hunger, etched into every line and shadow. This wasn't just a monster. This was a thinking, feeling being that had been trapped in an existence it never wanted, for longer than human civilization had existed. Father Bernie's Bible slipped from his hands and hit the stone floor with a sound like a gunshot. The creature's head snapped toward the noise with inhuman speed, those black eyes fixing on the fallen book. Its mouth began to open, slowly at first, then wider still, the jaw unhinging like a snake's, revealing rows of teeth that went back further than they should, all of them stained dark and sharp as broken glass. Then it smiled. "You found me," it said. The voice was like stones grinding together at the bottom of a dried well, each word scraping against my ears painfully. But underneath the roughness, there was something else. An accent I couldn't place. Inflections that suggested languages older than English. A way of forming words that came from an era when the world was different. "After all this time," it continued, taking a single step forward. The movement was wrong. Too fluid, too controlled, like a predator that had perfected the art of stalking over millennia. "They always find me eventually, century after century, soldiers and priests and scholars, all of you seeking the same things: proof, knowledge, truth." James raised his rifle, the red dot of his laser sight centering on the creature's chest. "Don't move! Stay exactly where you are!" The creature's smile widened impossibly further. "You cannot harm me with those toys, soldier. Do you think you are the first to point a weapon at me? The Romans tried with their spears and swords. The Crusaders tried with blessed blades and holy water. The Nazis tried with their precious modern firearms." Its black eyes swept across all of us. "I am still here. They are all bones in the darkness. What are you?" I heard myself ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The creature's gaze fixed on me, and I felt the weight of those ancient eyes like a physical pressure. "I think you know what I am, Dr. Grant. Your manuscripts told you. Your colleague there." It gestured toward Anna with one clawed hand. She translated the texts. "You know who I am." "Judas," Father Bernie whispered, his voice cracking. "Judas Iscariot." "Yes." The creature's voice held something that might have been satisfaction or might have been grief. "I am he who was called friend and became enemy. I am he who betrayed the Son of God for 30 pieces of silver. I am he who was cursed to walk the night eternal, feeding on blood, waiting for a judgment that will only come at the end of all things." Its wings suddenly unfurled from its back with a sound like leather snapping in wind. They were massive, easily spanning 15 feet, and covered in the same dark veins and ancient membrane as a bat's wings. They spread wide, blocking out what little light remained, casting us all into deeper shadow. "And I am so very hungry," Judas whispered. Then it moved. I've tried 1,000 times to describe what happened next, and words fail every time. Judas didn't run or leap. It simply moved, covering the distance between itself and Father Bernie in a fraction of a second. One moment it was by the tree, the next it was there, its clawed hand wrapped around Bernie's throat. Father Bernie tried to scream but couldn't. The grip was too tight, crushing his windpipe. His hands clawed at the creature's arm, trying to break free, his feet kicking uselessly as he was lifted off the ground. "You pray to your God," Judas said softly, almost gently, bringing Bernie's face close to its own. "You have faith in his mercy, his justice. But where is he now, priest? Where is your God when you need him most?" Bernie's lips moved, forming silent prayers, tears streaming down his face. Judas's mouth opened wide, impossibly wide, and its head darted forward with snake-like speed. The jaws closed around Bernie's throat, and I heard the sound of bone cracking, vertebrae shattering under pressure that no human jaw should be able to exert. Blood sprayed across the ancient stone floor. Bernie's body jerked once, twice, then went still. But Judas didn't stop. Its throat worked, swallowing, and I watched in horror as Bernie's body seemed to deflate, the skin turning gray and papery, as if decades of dehydration were happening in seconds. When Judas finally released him and let the corpse fall, Bernie looked like a mummy, skin stretched tight over bones, all the moisture and life drained away. leaving only a dried husk that barely resembled the man who'd been alive seconds before. The creature's mouth was red with blood, dripping down its chin and staining its ancient robes. It turned toward us, and its black eyes seemed brighter somehow, more alive. "Fire! Fire!" James screamed, and the chamber exploded with the sound of automatic weapons fire. Bullets tore into Judas's body. I saw impacts, dark fluid spraying, flesh tearing, bones splintering under the assault. The creature staggered backward, its wings wrapping around itself defensively. For a moment, I thought we'd actually heard it. Thought maybe the manuscripts had been wrong, that this thing could be killed with conventional weapons. Then I saw the wounds closing. Not healing. That word implies a gradual process. This was instantaneous. Flesh knitting back together in reverse, bones realigning themselves, skin sealing over the damage. Within seconds, there was no evidence that Judas had been shot at all. "Oh God," Adam whispered. "Oh God, oh God, oh." Judas moved again, its wings spreading wide and propelling it forward with impossible speed. It covered the distance to Adam in a single beat of those massive wings, landing in front of him with enough force to crack the stone floor. Adam tried to bring his rifle up, but Judas was faster. One clawed hand shot out and grabbed the weapon, crushing the metal like it was cardboard. The other hand grabbed Adam's head. I heard the young man's neck break before I saw it, a sound like green wood snapping. Judas's wings wrapped around them both, creating a cocoon of shadow and leather. When the wings opened again seconds later, Adam's body fell to the ground, neck torn open, eyes staring at nothing. "Run!" James shouted at us. "Get to the tunnels! Move!" Anna grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the nearest passage. I stumbled after her, my legs barely responding to commands from my brain. Behind us, I could hear more gunfire, more screaming. Lennon and Spears were firing in controlled bursts, trying to cover our retreat. I saw Judas's wings beat once, twice, propelling the creature upward toward the ceiling, moving with the agility of the bats that had infested this place. It clung to the stone above us, inverted, those black eyes tracking our movements. "It's hurting us," I heard myself say. "It's not trying to kill us all at once, it's hunting." The creature dropped from the ceiling, landing directly in Spears' path. The soldier tried to dodge, but Judas was too fast. Those clawed hands grabbed Spears by the shoulders, and with a sound like meat tearing, Judas pulled the man's arms from their sockets. Spears' scream was the worst thing I'd ever heard. It went on, high and breaking, until Judas's jaws closed around his throat and ended it. Lennon was screaming now too, screaming and firing until his magazine was empty, then pulling his sidearm and continuing to fire even as Judas stalked toward him with blood dripping from its chin. "Reload!" James shouted at him. "Lennon, reload!" But Lennon was too far gone, lost in panic and terror. He pulled the trigger on his empty pistol again and again, the click of the firing pins somehow audible even over the chaos. Judas's hand shot out and grabbed Lennon's head, fingers wrapping around the skull. I saw the claws dig in, saw blood well up around them. Then Judas twisted, and Lennon's body dropped to the ground, his head still in the creature's hand. James and Thaler were the only security personnel left now. They'd taken up positions on opposite sides of the chamber, creating crossfire, trying to use tactics and training to overcome an enemy that shouldn't exist. It didn't work. Judas moved between them like smoke, too fast to track, too fast to aim at. Its wings beat once, and it was on Thaler, clawed hands tearing through body armor like it was tissue paper. Another beat, and it was behind James, who spun and fired point blank into the creature's chest. The bullets passed through, exiting Judas's back and ricocheting off the stone walls. The wounds closed before the shell casings hit the ground. James's rifle clicked empty. He dropped it and pulled his combat knife, 8 inches of steel that looked pathetically small in his hand. "Run," he said to us, his voice steady despite the terror I could see in his eyes. "Both of you, run now." Anna was pulling me toward a side passage, but I couldn't stop watching. Couldn't look away from James as he faced down the creature with nothing but a knife and courage. Judas tilted its head, studying him. "You are brave, soldier. Braver than most. You do not run even though you know you cannot win." "Maybe," James said, shifting his grip on the knife, "but I can buy them time." "Time for what?" Judas asked, sounding genuinely curious. Time to reach the surface? Time to call for help? There is no help coming. There is only this tomb and me and the darkness that waits for all of you. James lunged, the knife aimed for Judas's throat. The attack was fast, professional, the product of years of training and combat experience. Judas caught his wrist mid-strike and held it there, effortlessly stopping the blade inches from its target. Then it began to squeeze. I heard the bones in James's wrist grinding together, then breaking. The knife clattered to the ground. "You fight well," Judas said, almost admiringly. "But you fight for nothing. They are already mine." Then its jaws opened wide and closed around James's throat. The ex-Marine's body jerked and spasmed, then went still. When Judas released him, another gray husk fell to the stone floor. Anna and I had reached the passage now. We could run, could try to escape into the tunnels, but the creature had said we were already its, had said there was no escape. "Reese," Anna whispered beside me, "we have to go. We have to." Judas's wings beat once, and suddenly it was there, between us and the tunnel entrance. It moved so fast my eyes couldn't track the motion. One moment it was across the chamber feeding on James. The next it was right in front of us. Anna screamed and tried to run in the opposite direction. She made it maybe 10 feet before Judas's wings swept out and knocked her off her feet. She hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of her, gasping for air. The creature stalked toward her slowly now, taking its time. "You translated the texts," it said to her. "You read the warnings. You knew what you would find here. And still you came." Anna scrambled backward, trying to get away, but there was nowhere to go. Her back hit the wall and she froze, staring up at the nightmare approaching her. "Please," she whispered. "Please. We didn't mean... We were just trying to..." "Trying to what?" Judas asked, kneeling beside her. One clawed hand reached out and almost gently touched her face. "Trying to prove I exist? Trying to uncover ancient mysteries? Trying to make your names famous in academic journals?" The hand moved to her throat. "You should have left this place sealed. Should have left me in darkness, but you didn't. And now you pay the price for curiosity." "No!" I shouted, running toward them. I didn't have a weapon, didn't have a plan. But I couldn't just stand there and watch Anna die. Judas's head turned toward me, those black eyes fixing on my face. Its hand tightened on Anna's throat, and I heard her choking, saw her hands clawing at the creature's grip. "Please," I begged, stopping a few feet away. "Please let her go. Take me instead. I'm the one who organized this expedition. I'm the one who wanted to open the tomb. She was just doing her job. Please." Judas studied me for a long moment. Then, to my shock, it released Anna. She collapsed to the ground, gasping and coughing, her hands clutching at her bruised throat. The creature stood and walked toward me. Each step was measured, deliberate, giving me time to see it coming, to understand what was about to happen. "You would trade your life for hers?" it asked. "Yes," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "Yes, I would." "Interesting." Judas circled me slowly, those wings rustling with each movement. "Most humans, when faced with death, become selfish. They beg for their own lives. They offer anything, betray anyone, say anything to survive a few more moments. But you..." It stopped in front of me. "You surprise me." My hand found the crucifix around my neck. I hadn't consciously reached for it. It was pure instinct, muscle memory from childhood. My grandmother had given it to me before she died, told me to wear it always, that it would protect me. I pulled it out from under my shirt and held it up between us. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Judas recoiled as if I'd struck it, those black eyes widening, wings pulling back defensively. The creature took a full step backward, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw something other than hunger and ancient suffering in its expression. I saw fear. You carry his symbol," Judas whispered, its voice losing that grinding quality and becoming almost human. "After all this time, after everything that has happened, you still carry his symbol." I held the crucifix higher, my hand shaking but my grip firm. The small gold cross caught the dim light, gleaming in the darkness. "Stay back," I said. "Don't come any closer." Judas stared at the crucifix, not with the hatred or pain I'd expected, but with something that looked almost like longing, like grief, like a man seeing something he'd lost long ago and desperately wanted back. "Do you know what that symbol means to me?" the creature asked softly. "Do you understand what it represents?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. "It is my prison," Judas continued, "my torment, my eternal reminder of what I did, what I became, what I can never stop being." Its voice shifted, the words flowing in a language I didn't recognize. Something older than Latin, older than Greek. The syllables had a rhythmic quality, almost like a prayer or a chant. Then it switched back to English, the words coming slowly, as if it was remembering a language it hadn't spoken in years. "You pray to him. You hold his symbol and think it will save you. But do you understand what it means to wait for his judgment?" The creature's eyes never left the crucifix, never left the small gold cross that my grandmother had worn for 70 years before passing it to me. "I have waited 2,000 years, Judas said, its voice carrying the weight of every one of those years. 2,000 years in this tomb, in this darkness, feeding on those who come seeking me. 2,000 years of praying for death, for release, for an end that will not come until he returns." It took a step closer, testing, and I thrust the crucifix forward. Judas stopped, that expression of mingled fear and longing intensifying. "And I will wait 2,000 more," it whispered. "And 2,000 after that, until the final judgment, until the end of all things, until he comes to condemn me as I deserve to be condemned." The creature's wings folded around its body like a shroud, and for a moment, in the dim light of the tomb, it looked almost human, almost pitiable. "So tell me, Dr. Grant," Judas said softly, "do you understand now? Do you understand what it means to wait for judgment that may never come?" The silence stretched between us, broken only by Anna's ragged breathing and the distant drip of water. Judas stood motionless, those ancient black eyes fixed on the crucifix in my trembling hand. "Lower your talisman," the creature said finally. "I will not harm you. Not yet. Not until you understand. Why should I trust you?" My voice cracked. "You murdered my team. I defended my territory, as I have for 2,000 years. This is my prison, Dr. Grant, and you opened the door." Slowly, I lowered the crucifix but kept my hand wrapped around it. Judas relaxed, its wings folding back. "Sit," it said. "You want truth? I will tell you." I didn't move. Couldn't. Judas moved to the dead oak tree and leaned against it. "You wonder why I hesitate. Why I don't kill you as I killed the others." Its voice grew softer, more human. "Because you offered your life for your companion. That is rare. In 2 millennia, I have seen it perhaps a dozen times. What do you want from me?" "Understanding, perhaps." Judas touched the tree's bark. "I did betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, but not for greed, for impatience. I believed he was the Messiah who would overthrow Rome. When I saw him healing instead of raising armies, I thought I could force his hand. I thought delivering him to the Romans would reveal his divine power." The creature's voice cracked. "Instead, I watched him die, watched him bleed on that cross, and I understood what I had truly done. Not forced the Messiah's hand, but murdered the Son of God." "So you hanged yourself," I said. "I tried. I took rope to this valley, to this tree, alive then. I tied it to a branch and put it around my neck. As I kicked away the stone, I prayed for death, for oblivion." Judas looked at me with eyes holding centuries of suffering. "But before I could die, a voice spoke, not God's, but something older. It said, 'You have betrayed the light. Now serve the darkness. Walk the night eternal until judgment day when your master returns to condemn you.' The rope burned away. My flesh transformed. The curse settled into my bones like ice, and I understood I could not die, not until he returns to judge the living and the dead at the end of all things." "How long have you been here?" "In this tomb? 1,600 years. Before that, I wandered, trying to die." The creature laughed bitterly. I walked into the sun, my skin burned but healed. I let Romans crucify me. I hung for 3 days and did not die. I drowned myself. My lungs filled with water, but I did not die. I let wild animals tear me apart. My body regenerated. There is no escape. I thought of the bodies. The people in the tunnels. What happened? They found me. Century after century. They come. And each time, I offer them the same choice. What choice? Death or damnation? Judas moved closer. I can kill them quickly, drain them, and leave them as bones. Or I can give them what I have. The curse. Eternal life that is really eternal death. My blood ran cold. You've been creating more. Yes, some accept out of fear. Some hoping the curse can be reversed. It cannot. Some believing immortality is a gift. They learn otherwise. But all eventually understand. This is not life. This is punishment. How many have you created? Dozens directly. But they create others, and those create more. Hundreds, perhaps. Maybe thousands, scattered across the world, all carrying my curse, all waiting for an end that will only come when he returns. I thought of Dorothy, my 8-year-old daughter with her gap-toothed smile. I have a daughter, I said quietly. I know. I can smell her on you. The faint scent of her shampoo on your jacket. Its black eyes fixed on mine. That is why I offer you the choice rather than killing you. What choice? But I already knew. You are injured, Judas said, and I realized it was right. My left leg was twisted, broken. You are weak. You will not make it through those tunnels alive. The bats will return. You will die here, and your daughter will never know what happened. The creature moved closer. Or you can accept my curse. You will transform. You will live. You will leave this place and return to the surface. You will see your daughter again. As a monster. As something more than human and less than human. You will be cursed to walk the night, to feed on blood, to exist until the end of days. But you will exist. You will have time to watch your daughter grow. Time to watch her die, I interrupted. Time to watch everyone I love turn to dust while I remain. Yes, but it is suffering with consciousness, with memory, with the possibility, however small, that when he returns, there might be forgiveness. Behind me, Anna was crying softly. You're insane, I told Judas. 2,000 years alone has broken you. Yes, I am broken. I am cursed. I am damned. But I am offering you a choice I was never given. Its wings spread slightly. Choose quickly. Your leg is broken. In an hour, you will be too weak to move. The bats will return, and you will die slowly. I looked at my leg, twisted at an unnatural angle. Now that adrenaline was fading, the pain was becoming unbearable. If I refuse, then I kill you quickly, mercifully, and your companion dies with you. Neither of you will leave this tomb. And if I accept, then you live. You transform. You carry my curse into the world above. You become my heir, my legacy, my punishment walking among the living. Judas moved closer. But you must choose now. I thought of Dorothy, of her birthday next month, of the promise I'd made to take her to the Science Museum, of all the moments I'd miss if I died here. I thought of Mia, my ex-wife, who'd have to tell our daughter that Daddy wasn't coming home. You will watch her grow old, Judas whispered. You will watch her die. You will watch her children die, and their children, and their children's children. You will walk through centuries of darkness, feeding on blood, losing pieces of your humanity with each passing year. That is the curse I offer. Why do you want to create more like yourself? For the first time, emotion crossed Judas's features. Because I am lonely. Because 2,000 years is a very long time to be alone with guilt and memories. Because misery demands company. Because if I must wait for eternity, I will not wait alone. The honesty struck me harder than any blow. This wasn't evil. This was loneliness so profound it had twisted a man into a monster. If I accept, will you let Anna go? Judas studied me. You offer yourself for her salvation? Again? Yes. Even knowing what you will become? Yes. The creature's wings folded. Very well. She may leave. She may return to the surface. No one will believe her, of course. But she will live. I looked at Anna. She was shaking her head frantically. Reese, no, don't do this. There is no other way, I said gently. I'm dying anyway. At least this way. You live. At least I get to see Dorothy one more time. I turned to Judas. Do it. But swear you'll let her go unharmed. I swear it. By the cross that condemned me, by the God who cursed me, I swear she will walk from this tomb alive. I lowered the crucifix. Then I accept. Judas moved with terrible speed, its hand on my shoulder. Once the transformation begins, it cannot be stopped. There is no cure, no reversal. You will be as I am, cursed to walk the night until he returns to judge us all. I understand. Do you truly understand? The hunger? The way you will see every human as food? The slow death of your humanity? The isolation? The endless waiting? Yes, I lied. Then so be it. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of dark, sharp teeth. Its head darted forward, and I felt those teeth sink into my neck, piercing skin, finding the artery, tearing it open. The pain was indescribable. Not just physical. It was like my entire body was being rewritten, like every cell was screaming as it transformed. I felt venom flooding my bloodstream, racing toward my heart. It burned like liquid fire, like acid dissolving me from inside. I tried to scream but couldn't. Judas's hand clamped over my mouth. My vision went dark. I could feel my heart stuttering, trying to pump blood being drained away, trying to circulate venom rewriting my biology. Then something changed. The pain shifted. My senses exploded outward. I could hear Anna's heartbeat across the chamber, could smell blood on stone, could taste copper and death in the air. My heartbeat slowed, each beat taking longer, more deliberate. The rhythm of something that no longer needed to pump blood to survive. Judas released me and I collapsed, gasping. But I didn't need air. I was breathing out of instinct, not necessity. My broken leg was already healing, bones sliding back into place. It is done, Judas said. You are mine now. My heir. My curse made flesh. I looked up at the creature, at my creator, and saw it differently now. Not as a monster, but as what I would become. How long before I looked the same? Go, Judas said, pointing toward the tunnel. Take your companion and leave. Return to your surface world. Try to maintain your humanity for as long as you can. But know this. The hunger will come. And when it does, you will feed. And with each feeding, you will lose a little more of yourself. It leaned closer. I cannot die until he returns to judge the living and the dead. And neither can you. We are his instruments of punishment, living reminders of betrayal and cowardice. Go. Spread the curse if you must feed, or resist and suffer as I have suffered. Either way, you are mine now. Anna helped me to my feet. My legs worked. The healing was complete. But I felt hollow, like something essential had been replaced with hunger. We stumbled toward the tunnel. As we reached the entrance, I looked back. Judas stood surrounded by the bodies, those wings folded against its back. In the dim light, it looked almost human, almost pitiable. Will you be here if others come? Yes, I will always be here, until the end of days. Then it turned and walked back into deeper darkness. Anna and I fled. That was 6 months ago. I'm writing this from Prague, far from Boston, far from Dorothy, far from everything I was. The curtains are drawn against afternoon sun. It doesn't kill me, but it hurts. I feed carefully. I target criminals, dealers, traffickers, murderers, people the world won't miss. I tell myself this makes it better, but I know the truth. With each feeding, I become less human. The guilt has faded to a dull ache. The horror at tasting blood has been replaced by anticipation. My humanity is slipping away. I can't see Dorothy anymore. I tried once, 2 months after the transformation. I stood outside her school during recess, watching her play, and I felt the hunger spike so violently, I had to run. Her heartbeat, her laughter, the scent of her innocence. It called to the predator inside me. I sent Mia divorce papers last month. Told her through lawyers I'd taken a long-term research position somewhere remote. She seemed relieved. She'd already moved on. I've met others like me, others carrying Judas's curse. There are more of us than you'd think, scattered across the world, all trying to maintain some humanity while the monster grows stronger. One is a woman named Catherine, turned by Judas in 1347, came to that tomb seeking a cure for the Black Death, found damnation instead. She's been alive for nearly 700 years. She explained how the curse spreads. Everyone Judas has bitten and allowed to live becomes a vampire. Everyone they bite becomes one too. Generation after generation, an exponentially growing plague, all tracing back to that tomb. How many are there? I asked her once. Hundreds, maybe thousands. We don't maintain census records. And we're all stuck like this? Until the end of the world? She nodded. Until the final judgment. Until Christ returns to separate the righteous from the damned. So that's my future. Centuries of darkness. Centuries of hunger. Centuries of watching everyone I love grow old and die while I remain frozen at 34. Sometimes I think about going back to that tomb. About confronting Judas. About demanding answers. But I'm afraid I've already become too much like him. Afraid that if I see him again, I'll understand too well why he spreads the curse. Because I'm lonely too. Because the isolation is becoming unbearable. Because misery really does demand company. Judas didn't multiply his curse to share his burden. He multiplies it because if he must wait for eternity, he will not wait alone. And now, neither will I. I am Judas's heir. I am his punishment, walking among the living. I am his legacy spreading through the world like a plague, creating more monsters, expanding the curse with each victim I let live rather than kill. And when the end comes, if it ever comes, perhaps then we will finally know if there was ever any forgiveness for men like us. But until that day, I wait. As Judas has waited for 2,000 years. As I will wait for 2,000 more.